in the very first college football playoff rankings, I think there's a really good chance that Indiana is ranked in the top 5. And if they're not in the top 5, I think they might be 6th. IU is 9-0, and they are beating the brakes off of everybody that the Big Ten put in front of them and their non-conference schedule, which was not difficult by any stretch of the imagination, went really well for them too. They are mollywhopping everybody in the Big Ten that they are playing. Now, they don't play Penn State. They haven't played Michigan, haven't played Ohio State yet, don't play Oregon. So it hasn't exactly been a murderer's row. But they are undefeated. They are 9-0. And I'm interested to see what the college football playoff does with Indiana, because there are arguments on both sides of whether or not Indiana should be ranked in the top 5. There is the argument that that is a Power 4 program, a team in the Big Ten that is 9-0. In the AP poll, they're ranked 8th, behind teams with one loss, like Tennessee, Penn State, Texas, Ohio State, Georgia. So there's a plethora of teams with a loss in front of them, and Indiana does not have one. I think on one side of the argument, it's that, it's a Big Ten school that's undefeated through their first 9 games. If that was Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Wisconsin, Iowa, Nebraska, Oregon, Washington, USC, would those schools be ranked probably number 1? Probably. But IU is not a football power by any stretch of the imagination. They do not have the football history of when you look at the teams who are ranked above them. Tennessee, Penn State, Texas, Miami, Ohio State, Georgia, Oregon. Indiana is sticking out like a sore thumb. Even the schools behind them, at BYU, Notre Dame, Alabama, Boise State, SMU, LSU, Texas A&M. One of these things is not like the other, and it's Indiana. So the argument would be, if that was Ohio State with the resume that they have, they would be the number 1 ranked team in the country. But because it's Indiana, they won't be ranked as the number 1 team. They won't be ranked in the top 5. And I think there's part of that is a valid argument. I think that is absolutely something that you can look at and say, yeah, they're 9-0, and they are beating teams 47-10 and 31-17 and 56-7, 41-24, 42-28, 52-14, 77-3. Those are big-time wins. Indiana has done what a lot of other schools this season have not done. And we've talked about it a lot extensively on this show, is that I'm impressed by Oregon and Miami because they have handled their business. Everybody that's been put in front of them, they have not had the letdown that Georgia has, that Ohio State has, that Texas and Penn State and Tennessee and Notre Dame and Alabama have had. Indiana has lined up and kicked everybody's ass they faced, which is something not even Oregon can't say, that they've kicked everybody's ass that they faced. Miami can't say that we have just beat down our opponent week after week after week. The only one who could really say that is Indiana. And so I think there's a case to be made for, should they be ranked in the top 5? You can argue that if the roles were reversed, if Texas was 9-0 and Indiana was 7-1, Texas would be ranked as the number 1 team in the country, and Indiana would be ranked 22nd. I don't think that's outrageous to say. But then on the flip side, and this is probably where my one biggest issue with the College Football Playoff Committee comes up, is that when you look at Indiana's resume, what's the standout win? What is the win that makes you go, yeah, that's impressive? Of the 9 teams that Indiana has played, exactly 1 is receiving votes in the AP Top 25. And if you go by the vote rankings after that, it would be Washington. It would be ranked at 30th. 30th ranked Washington is the best team that Indiana has played. Now, they beat Washington by a couple of touchdowns. But Washington, 2024 Washington, if that's going to be your hang your hat on the 5-4 Huskies. I don't know that makes you feel all warm and fuzzy inside, that you feel like we've got Washington would be ranked behind Louisiana Lafayette and UNLV and Tulane. So if that is the big time win on your schedule, I mentioned last weekend that I thought Michigan State, that there was a good chance Michigan State was the best team that Indiana had played this year. And Michigan State is now 4-5. So not exactly a strong resume for the Hoosiers. And that, I think, is the counter argument, too. If the roles were reversed, if this was Ohio State, if this was Michigan, if this were Penn State, they would be ranked number 1 in the country. And you could probably have that argument. On the flip side, Indiana has been the gigantic beneficiary of a really, really bad Big Ten schedule, where not only the Big Ten schedule, if you look at their non-conference, was Florida International, Western Illinois, and Charlotte. Those are not exactly Western Illinois, God bless their souls, is, if not the worst, damn near close to the worst FCS program. Florida International, if that, they're 3-6. If that is your kind of like, hey, we're really challenging ourselves non-conference, just like Florida International, Charlotte is 3-6 this season. Got a nice sneeze out of the way. They're 3-6. So the worst FCS program in America, and then 2 3-6 group of 5 schools is your non-conference. That deserves scrutiny. And I don't think you can argue really any other. If you're going to be up in the upper echelons of the college football playoff discussion, your non-conference schedule has to be looked at under the microscope. And Indiana's non-conference schedule is dreadful. And I can't blame them. They're looking for wins. They probably didn't expect year number 1 under Curt Cignetti to be 9-0 undefeated in the Big Ten. I don't know that they thought that it was going to be that way, let alone anybody else. But they control their own destiny for the Big Ten championship game. But when you look at the teams on their conference schedule, they played UCLA, who is 2-4 in the Big Ten. They played Maryland, who is 1-4 in the Big Ten. They played Northwestern, who is 2-4 in the Big Ten. Nebraska, guess what? 2-4 in the Big Ten. Washington, 3-3. Oh my gosh, look out, Murderers Row. Michigan State, 2-4 in the Big Ten. They still have to go they still are home for Purdue. Guess what? Purdue's 0-5 in the conference. Michigan is 3-3 in the conference. The pretty much only game that Indiana has to hang any semblance of like, this is our resume, is against Ohio State in a couple of weeks. Because when you look at of the 18 teams in the Big Ten, they played teams that are tied for 12th and 15th and 17th. They have not played a difficult schedule. And that, I think, is the issue for the argument of like Indiana should be ranked in the top 5, because here's what I think is going to happen. Either they beat Michigan on Saturday, they go to 10-0, then have a bye week, then travel to Ohio State. And if they lose to Ohio State, they will drop dramatically from 4th in the college football playoff rankings. And I would guess that Indiana's probably ranked 7th. They drop out of the playoff discussion. And then you can say, this would not happen to LSU, Tennessee, Nebraska, Ohio State, Michigan, USC, Oregon. And you're right, and you can have that gripe. But right now, sitting here today, does Indiana deserve to be ranked in the top 5 of the college football playoff rankings? To me, the answer is unequivocally no. No, they don't. And I think that is a problem on a couple of different levels because, one, at the end of the day, ultimately, the games that happen on the field have to matter, right? Like, that is the one thing that we can all look at and judge. You can talk about extenuating circumstances. You can talk about strength of schedule, etc. At the end of the day, Did you beat the team that was lined up across from you? And Indiana has done that time after time after time, steadily, and kicked the hell out of everybody who has been on the field with them. And that deserves praise and admiration. Then there comes the other stuff that comes with the brand and the strength of schedule and the, well, actually, but ultimately, what is their resume right now to be ranked in the top 5 or ranked in the top 10? That doesn't include there being a goose egg in their record. I don't have the answer to that question. And it's likely that you don't, they don't, and the College Football Playoff Committee doesn't either. And so that's where I think I'm at with the Hoosiers is, are you undefeated? Yes. But what have you shown me of who? It's essentially your resume is here's who we haven't lost to rather than here's who we've beaten. And that's not necessarily 100% under their control outside of the non-conference slate, which I think they would admit sucks. But the argument that this would be a top-ranked team if it was somebody else in the Big Ten, I don't know that it holds a ton of water in this situation, because I think if Ohio State's non-conference schedule was Charlotte, Florida International, and Western Illinois, and then the teams that are finishing 14th through 18th in the Big Ten thus far, I think that would be under scrutiny too, and deservedly so. So, does Indiana deserve to be ranked in the top 5 of the college football playoff? To me, no. But we'll see on Saturday, because I think a win over Michigan, regardless of what Michigan is in 2024, is still going to be a like, hey, I think to Indiana, a win over Michigan is similar to, you know, if Mississippi State beats somebody like Oklahoma, Texas, Texas A&M, Florida, Georgia, LSU, that to them is like, hey, we're not supposed to do this, and we just did this. That should mean something. So we'll reassess after Saturday. But I just know when the first college football playoff rankings come out, I get the impression that Indiana probably is not going to be thrilled with where they are ranked and use that as the chip on the shoulder, disrespect, nobody believes in us mantra. But I don't know that it is disrespect. It might be like you are rated appropriately until you lose. And I don't see IU going 12-0, just a hunch. And we'll see what happens then. Then I think they can gripe. If they lose and they fall from 4th to 21st, then yes, I think you can say, hey, this didn't happen to Penn State. This didn't happen to Tennessee. This didn't happen to LSU. This didn't happen to Texas. And they'll have an argument when and maybe if that happens. Want to know your thoughts. Where would you rank Indiana in the first college football playoff rankings? Would love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you are watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content we're pumping out. If you're listening on a podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. Goes a long way in helping out the channel. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily Huddle.